Hi, my name is Matthew Belisario. Welcome to another edition of the Belisario Sonic YouTube channel. Today, I wanted to do this video on one of my favorite musicians in popular music and modern history, and that's Bob Dylan. And I would say out of all the people throughout my life, and especially on influences on me as a musician, as a songwriter, has probably been Bob Dylan has been the biggest. And so I want to talk about that on this video, and also take a little journey through his discography on what I have of him on vinyl, which is quite a bit. And so, and what intrigues me about Bob is that he was able to go through, have a career starting in 1962 that continues to this very moment as I'm making this video, with a new album that he's released not too long ago. From 1962 until now, he has been at the top of his game. There's been ebbs and flows for sure. Some albums that were not so great, but overall a steady career of touring and selling record albums and being one of the most prolific songwriters in modern history. Without a doubt, probably one of the greatest lyric writers ever as far as modern music goes. And is very creative as far as the chord structures he comes up with, even though beginning with the very simple folk chord structures, 3 chord structures, but changed genres quite a bit. And I'll talk about that, which I find to be refreshing in an artist that can go from doing just acoustic folk music into doing rock music and blues music and total country and western music, and then into some of the jazz stuff, and even did the gospel, 3 gospel records, and so on and so forth. So the guy's been pretty creative throughout his career and is able to have kept a steady career, even though changing genres and changing his songwriting and even his voice changing throughout time. So what I'm going to do is start at the beginning, and I'm just going to talk about my favorite records and why they're my favorite. Just starting off with the very first album, and this right here is an original copy of the very first record. And of course, this is 1962. He starts off, he's spending time in Greenwich Village in New York, and is just becoming very popular there. He puts out his first record. John Hammond Jr. discovers him, and here you have a mix of his own songs as well as covers that he does. Woody Guthrie, and he does some of the old blues songs like See That My Grave Is Kept Clean. He does a cover of House of the Rising Sun, but just a total acoustic folk record here. And that's the first one he comes out with in 1962. I also picked up a limited edition Simply Vinyl repress that was put out, just because that one there isn't the best sounding copy. It's pretty good shape, but it still has some surface noise, while this one here is a very clean repressing that was made in England. So that was one of the ones I picked up some years ago in the 90s when I was collecting vinyl back then. Then we go to just a year later, 1963, and the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan comes out. This is the same repress made in England. But here's where the great, Blowin' in the Wind, Girl from the North Country, Masters of War, Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. Just a fantastic album, and probably out of the first 4 albums, this is probably going to be my favorite one right here. But this is just a great record by Bob, still sticking in that folk acoustic genre. Times They Are Changing. This is in an original stereo copy, not in the greatest shape, but this right here would come out in 1964, just a year later. And again, this is a pretty great album as well. Times They Are Changing, with God on Our Side, One Too Many Mornings, North Country Blues. So another solid outing here, but still, again, sticking in that same folk genre. I was able to pick this up, not in the greatest shape, but it is an original master recording, and so I picked this one up, again, back in the 90s when they were pretty reasonable to pick up. The next album is going to be another side of Bob Dylan, and this would also be in 1964. And this is a pretty good album as well. Probably, I think, the weakest of the first five, but still pretty good. All I Really Want to Do, Chimes of Freedom, I Shall Be Free, To Ramona, My Back Pages. Not a weak album by any stretch of the imagination, but probably out of the first five, if I had to pick, would probably be my least favorite one. Still in the same genre. And then this right here is an original copy of the next one, which is 1965. Now, this record here is kind of special to me because was my mom's original record, and obviously she must have had good taste in music back then. This is an original copy of Bringing It All Back Home, which I would say is probably my favorite out of the first five albums if I had to rank them. Subterranean Homesick Blues, Maggie's Farm, Love Minus Zero's on here. Mr. Tambourine Man, It's All Right Ma, It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. So just one heck of a solid record here. And again, this one's is special just because it was my mom's and I was able to hang on to that. And then I also picked up one of those limited edition from Great Britain reprints here as well. In 1965, things start to change for Bob, and so here's where he starts to Highway 61, and here's where the famous Like a Rolling Stone comes out, and this is an original copy here, and here he starts to go electrified and starts to upset a lot of his fans. But again, that's another thing that I like about Bob Dylan is he's going to change it up because he wants to change it up. He's not worried about what people are going to think. So he comes out with Like a Rolling Stone, Tombstone Blues, Highway 61, Just Like Tom Thumb's Blues, and Desolation Row, a great album. But he starts to change it up. He's now kind of going into rock and roll. This right here is a repress here that I picked up back in the 90s. And then here's where everything kind of just changes completely. And that's 1966 with Blonde on Blonde. And I probably don't need to spend a lot of time talking about this record. Rainy Day Women, Pledging My Time, Visions of Johanna, Stuck Inside of Memphis with the Mobile Blues Again, Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat, Just Like a Woman. All these great songs on this record, and this is a fantastic record, but again, showing how he is changing and basically becoming more rock and roll now than he used to be. Songwriting and lyrics are still there. He's has lost no ground there. Then the 1967, he puts out a greatest hits, which is basically all those records I just went through, the greatest hits of what they consider to be his greatest hits at that time. But this is 1967 original copy there. Next album would be John Wesley Harding, which I do not have that on vinyl, but that was 1967. Here he's starting to go country, and people are kind of starting to question, what the heck's this guy doing? In 1969, he is full-blown country, pretty much. It's Nashville Skyline. And he's recording with country musicians, Charlie Daniels and Johnny Cash. And his voice now is noticeably changing. You got Girl from the North Country, I Threw It All Away, Lay Lady Lay, playing all over the radio. And people are like, who is this? It's his voice is completely changed. It's Lay Lady Lay, completely different than what you're used to hearing Bob sing. And so now he's taking a turn in this direction. And so again, the songs are fantastic, but he's completely changing genres, which is really cool in my opinion. Here's another one that I picked up that's just another used copy that you can see there. I couldn't get the sticker off of these people. Anyways, the next one after that was going to be what they would say would be a failed album, which was Self Portrait. Now, I do not have that particular one on vinyl. But, again, more of acoustic singer-songwriter stuff. Then New Morning came out in 1970, which I also do not have on vinyl. Greatest Hits in 1971, Greatest Hits 2. And then Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, still sticking to that singer-songwriter, but still more acoustic country sounding. So he's got several years here where he's kind of hanging on to that country and western sound. And then in 1973, this album comes out. I happen to have a promo copy of this one, and that is just called Dylan. And this would probably be, again, probably one of my least favorite records of his. But there's still some gems on here, like Sarah Jane, and he does some covers of A Fool Such As I in Spanish is the Loving Tongue. And Big Yellow Taxi does a version of that on here. So I would say that as far as all the records up until this point, and this is 1973, I would say this and probably Self-Portrait are probably going to be his least popular albums, and probably just my least favorite of them as well. Then we get to a gem in 1974, Planet Waves. And this right here, this album was made with Robbie Robertson and the band. And to me, this is just a fantastic record from beginning to end. And this, to me, is like his comeback album for this particular time. He's had several of these moments, I guess you could say, where he had a couple of albums that didn't do so well, and then he just came back with this fabulous album. This is one of those. And so you have Going, Going, Gone, Forever Young, Dirge, Wedding Song. I mean, this, and then you've got that sound of Robbie Robertson and the band playing on it. This is a fantastic album. I highly recommend this one. And I just happen to have a couple of copies. They're in pretty good shape with the exception of these stickers that you can't get off. But I was able to pick up some of these used. And so then you have the live album down Before the Flood, which I don't have on vinyl. But then you have a record that's even going to top the one I just told you that was a great album. And of course, that is going to be Blood on the Tracks. This one is a reissue. This album right here is probably one of the greatest rock albums ever made. I mean, and that's not exaggerating. This is the greatest songwriting, great performances on this, and recently released also are all the original acoustic tracks that he wrote, the original songs, and then brought in the band and completely changed the way they are, the way they were when they were just acoustic. And so I'll talk about that when I get to the end here of these, the end of this discography. But this was a reprint, and then I was able to pick up this too, new, which was the original master recording. That's how much I like this record. And of course, you have to go through the whole tracks on here, but you got Tangled Up in Blue, You're a Big Girl Now, Idiot Wind, one of my favorites, If You See Her Say Hello, Shelter from the Storm. Just a fantastic record. So if you're just getting into Dylan, this is one I would recommend picking up first. Then you had the Basement Tapes, which is more stuff with the band, and I don't have that on vinyl, but that's also a great record. And then the next one after that would be Desire, which is here. This is 1976 that we're up to, and I like this record. It's got the hurricane, Story of the Hurricane on here. It's got Isis, One More Cup of Coffee, one of my favorite songs by him. You got the story about Joey the Gangster on here, and Romance in Durango, Sarah. So this is a pretty good album. And I've got a couple of copies. This one they're all used copies. This is an original. I was given, I think, this one, which is just a promo, back when nobody wanted promos, and they were absolutely worth nothing. And in fact, people would just give them away because they didn't want promos with the stickers on them and all this stuff. They were not viewed as being collectible. And now everybody pays like double for a promo record, which I find kind of hilarious when we used to be given these. Anyways, so yeah, a few copies of those used that I just picked up over the years. Next album would be Hard Rain. And so this right here album is a live record, and it's pretty good. I enjoy it. It's got some good renditions of You're a Big Girl Now and Maggie's Farm, and I Threw It All Away. So pretty good record there if you like live records. Then the next one, I like this album a lot. It's called Street Legal, and I've got a few of these a couple of these copies. Street Legal. Again, here he kind of changes his sound again, kind of going into almost, he's got a lot of horns on this record, and Again, you're talking about 1978, but some really cool songs on here, especially Changing of the Guards and No Time to Think and Senor. Three great songs on this album. And so this is another one I think is really good. And again, he's changing his sound on this record somewhat comparatively to what you've heard before by him, especially with the horns and everything else. Again, the lyrics are fantastic. After that, you've got Live at Budokan 1979, which I do not have on vinyl. Then the next studio album, he's going to go into what I call the gospel period with 3 records that are going to be predominantly Christian records. And so the first one of those is 1979, Slow Train Coming. I love this record. Has a great sound on it. Gotta Serve Somebody, Precious Angel, Slow Train, Change My Way of Thinking, and a beautiful When He Returns, all piano, beautiful. So this is to me probably the best of the 3 what I would call gospel records, which is going to be Slow Train, Saved, and Shot of Love. I think this is probably my favorite of them, and I've got a couple copies of them that I've just picked up over the years. So Slow Train Coming, and then the next one is going to be Saved. And this is the version of the Saved that I've got, which has a different cover on it than some of the other ones. So, but I still enjoy this record quite a bit. It's got some pretty cool songs on here, like A Satisfied Mind, Saved, Solid Rock, and probably my favorite on the record is Pressing On. It's a beautiful song. So I don't think this is by any stretch of the imagination a throwaway record. It's very good songwriting. Great lyrics, but kind of almost in a gospel flavor. And then the final one is Shot of Love. And this was a pretty good record as well. I think it's the weakest of all 3 of them, though. So this would end kind of his gospel period there. The next one after that is going to be another pretty good record called Infidels. And the sound of those 3 records kind of does carry a bit over onto this record, but it's not so expressly a Christian record, even though there's some lyrics that allude to things like, the Antichrist or different things like that, or the abuse of power and things like that he talks about on here. And he's got Joker Man on here, License to Kill, a great song. Man of Peace, that's what I was alluding to on this record about the Antichrist and all that kind of stuff. So he's still kind of in the vein of what he was in the 3 prior records, but this is kind of more of a newer sounding record. And it's still, I like it quite a bit. I think this was kind of a step up from the Shot of Love. After that, we've got one of my favorite live records of him. It's not a bootleg, and that's Real Live. And this is a pretty good record here. Now we're up to 1985, and he's got some great renditions of I and I, License to Kill, It Ain't Me, Babe, and one of my favorite versions of Tangled Up in Blue, where he's just playing the acoustic guitar. This is a great, fun record to listen to. I really enjoy it. Next after that is going to be Empire Burlesque, 1985. Pretty good record, but I would say probably, if I was going to rank them, I would say it's probably one of the weaker records, and I think probably the best song on this record is probably going to be Dark Eyes, which is the very last song. So I would say not a terrible record, but not one of his best and not one of my favorites. After that, the Biograph came out, which was kind of like his first bootleg series. I don't have that on vinyl. I have it on CD. That would be what would come out in 1985 as well. But the next studio album that would come out would be 1986, would be Knocked Out Loaded. And so that's this one right here. And this particular record is probably, again, I would say probably not one of my favorite records. Brownsville Girl is probably the strongest song on here, in my opinion. And I would say it's a step down from Empire Burlesque. So I'd say this is probably, again, one of my least favorite records there. So you're talking 85 and 86 He would, however, come back with a great record, 1988, Dylan and the Dead. And this is a pretty cool record. So you got a great version of Slow Train on here. You got to Serve Somebody, Queen Jane Approximately, Joey, All Along the Watchtower, and Knocking on Heaven's Door. So this is a pretty good record that he put out. After that, you've got Down in the Groove, 1988. I don't have that one on vinyl. It's not a terrible record, but I would say it's about in line with Empire Burlesque, in my opinion. The next record is going to be a masterpiece, and so you can see how he kind of again has kind of gone up, had some great records, kind of had a couple okay records, and then ones that didn't do so well, and then boom, he comes back with just another phenomenal record, one of his greatest, called Oh Mercy. And the sound on this one changes as he's got Daniel Lanois is the producer, and it's got this production to it that sounds like you're sitting in the middle of a field in the middle of the night with the crickets chirping, and he's going to tell all these stories. And the album is a masterpiece from beginning to end. So this A Political World, Where Teardrops Fall, Everything is Broken, Ring Them Bells, absolutely beautiful song. Man in the Long Black Coat, one of the favorite ones I like to play still today when I do acoustic sets. Most of the time, What Good Am I, Disease of Conceit, What Was It You Wanted, and Shooting Star. So this is a fantastic record. If you're going to, you don't want to get into Dylan again, this is another one that I would put at the top of your list. Just a fantastic record. And so I've got an original copy there, and then I got one of those music on vinyl reprints of it as well. Again, it's just one of my favorite records, and a masterpiece in my opinion. Next, you're going to have a few albums here that I do not have on vinyl. So this is going to be the early 90s. Under a Red Sky, mediocre album. He's got bootleg series 1 through 3 that came out, which all the bootleg series, by the way, are great. They're just they go back and cull and pull out all the unreleased tapes and things like that. So those are all really good. Good As I've Been to You, pretty good blues record, type blues acoustic stuff. Then you had the 30th anniversary in 1993 and a follow-up with World Gone Wrong. Now I consider Good As I've Been to You and World Gone Wrong kind of the same type of record, that acoustic blues. And they're both pretty good. I would recommend them. I just don't happen to have them on vinyl. Then you had the Greatest Hits Volume 3 in 1994. And then you come up to one of my favorite live records of his, and that's MTV's Unplugged. And this record, when it first came out, I loved it. And it was just one of my favorites. And it's still one of my favorites. I even still put the DVD on. And I still, during my acoustic sets, there's still songs that I play from this that I really like. So, and now we're up to 1995 was when this came out, and just great songs on here: Tombstone Blues, Shooting Star, All Along the Watchtower, Times They Are Changing, John Brown, Desolation Row, Rainy Day Women, Love Minus Zero, Dignity, Knocking on Heaven's Door, great version of Like a Rolling Stone, and With God on Our Side. So this was a great record that he put out. And I would say out of all the Unplugged records, this is my favorite of all of them. Next after that, another masterpiece, in my opinion, and another Daniel Lanois production, and that's Time Out of Mind. Every single song, again, from beginning to end, in my opinion, this whole record is fantastic. I would say that if there's any weak link on this record, it's probably the very last song, and I still like it. It's kind of a quirky song, but again, very lyrically driven. But the sound on this record, again, it just gives it that ambiance. It's almost an early evening ambiance. I don't know how else to explain it, but the songwriting on it, just fantastic. The lyrics are just fantastic, and this was, in my opinion, another one of his masterpieces. After that, you had the Dylan Live 69, another bootleg series that came out. An Essential Bob Dylan came out, kind of a greatest hits. And then Love and Theft came out. I don't have that one on vinyl. That's a pretty good record, though. I would recommend Love and Theft. Another couple of bootleg series came out, and a best of. And then we come up to 2006 with Modern Times, which is this one here. And I like this record quite a bit. Thunder on the Mountain, Spirit on the Water, Rolling and Tumbling, When the Deal Goes Down, Someday Baby, Working Man's Blues, Nettie Moore. Great album, really. And this is, I would say, of all the modern records he's done, this is probably one of the best ones. I really like this record. And now he's kind of into almost a country western, but not quite. It's still kind of hard to describe. But I would say almost a country western / singer-songwriter type of songs. But again, his voice is now, changed again. He's kind of has a different, brings a different type of songwriting here, even though, again, very lyrically driven. But I think, again, if this is as far as the newer records go, this is probably one of my favorites. And this right here is 2006. The next one after that is going to be Dylan, which is just another greatest hits type of thing. Then they did another bootleg series, and then Together Through Life was 2009. I don't have that one on vinyl, but that's a pretty good record, kind of in the same vein as Modern Times was. Then they released an original mono recordings, another bootleg series. They did an In Concert, 1963, which I don't have on vinyl. Tempest came out in 2012. I thought it was probably the weakest of all the newer records personally. Not a bad record. I wouldn't put it down, on like a 5 record. It was probably like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, but not one of his best. Another bootleg series they came out with, another anniversary concert. Basement Tapes came out, which I don't have any of those on vinyl, so that's kind of why I'm skipping through those fairly quickly. The next one that I have is called Shadows in the Night 2015. This one wasn't a big seller. And you have Bob Dylan here as a crooner. Now, if you don't like Bob Dylan, if you don't like his voice already, you're not going to like this at all, because it's Bob Dylan singing these classic songs like I'm a Fool to Want You and The Night We Called It a Day and things like that. And it's probably not still one of my favorite records either. But I like the fact, again, that he's going to step out and do what he wants to do. So he's like, I really like these songs. I'm doing my own versions of them. I don't, give a damn what anybody thinks. So there you have it on that. And the next couple of records he's going to do are kind of going to be in that vein. Another bootleg series. You've got Fallen Angels that came out. A record called Triplicate, which I do have back in my box set collection, Triplicate, and it's basically 3 albums of this kind of crooning stuff. Then you've got Trouble No More that came out, another bootleg series. So the Gospel Years, which I've got on CD. All these I have on CD if I don't have them on vinyl. You had Alive that came out, 1962 to 66, a whole box set of that came out. And then you've got this right here, which I love, which I have the whole box set on CD as well. But this right here are the outtakes of the Blood on the Tracks. And so it's called More Blood on the Tracks. And this I just absolutely love, because it is the raw versions of all the Blood on the Tracks songs. And I love a lot of them. They just sound really good. And you hear the what he wrote. He came in the studio, just grabbed his acoustic guitar, played these songs, they recorded them, and then they brought the band in and did band versions of them. But I really like these stripped down versions of Tangled Up in Blue, Simple Twist of Fate, Shelter from the Storm, You're a Big Girl Now, Buckets of Rain, If You See Her, Say Hello. Idiot Wind, fantastic. I think the acoustic version is probably better than the album version, but that's just my opinion. So that's this album here, and that was released just recently in 2018. Then you have this final one here. The one I skipped over was the box set of the Rolling Thunder Review, the 1973 recordings, and that was put out in the box set as well. And then this one right here came out in 2020, just last year, and this is a really good record, called Rough and Rowdy Ways. And again, his sound has changed a little bit on this last record. where it's kind of back into this kind of I can't really call it country. It's more of kind of hard to explain. Singer songwriter is kind of a generic way to explain it, but he's just changed his sound again on this record, and the lyrics are very, very good. He's got one about John F. Kennedy on here, as you can see on the back. But another solid record by Bob. And here he is. You know, we're in 2020. Guy started back in 1962. So we're going on 60 years here, folks. And there's not very many people that have been this prolific and have had this kind of a career for this long and still puts out this kind of songwriting and quality recordings than Bob Dylan. And so that's all I have for this particular video. And you know, I just wanted to kind of go through that and just talk a little bit about Bob and his career. And it's just amazing to me that the guy's been touring as long as he has. You know, he's on the never-ending tour. If it wasn't for this COVID thing, he would still be out there touring right now, and has been for years. So on and off, but almost consistently now since the 80s, I think. So the guy's on the road, and he still consistently puts out good records. And I'm interested to see what he's going to do next. And so that's another thing that I like about him is you don't know what he's going to try next, and kind of keeps you on your toes. And why go back and redo the same old things over and over again? And that's kind of a lot of fans out there seem to think that they should be able to dictate what their favorite recording artists are going to do. And so if they put out a record that they like, they want to hear that person put out 5 more records just like the one that they like. You know, the same song, just change the lyrics up a little bit. And it's like, you know, how much more boring can you get? We don't need to hear the same stuff over and over. And so that's one thing about Bob Dylan is he doesn't get stuck in that rut for very long. He might release 3, 4, or 5 records that kind of go together, and then he'll change direction for a few records, and then he'll go back to something else. And then he might kind of go back and pick up, you know, where he was before, and then he'll turn around and change again for 3 or 4 more records, and so on and so forth. And he's done that since 1962. So that's one of the reasons why I really like him, why I really appreciate him. I love his songwriting. I love his ability to write lyrics. Takes the time to write quality lyrics, which most songwriters aren't very good at. Let's face it. Most lyrics to pop songs are pretty bad. They may be catchy to sing along with, and you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But it takes a lot of effort to sit down and actually come up with lyrics that actually have some depth to them and some meaning to them, and actually have where the person listening can reflect on those lyrics. And so I think that's where Bob Dylan shines. As far as his voice goes, look, the guy's been around for 60 years, just about. He has made a great career at touring and going out and being a successful musician. So say what you will about his voice. And I'm not saying you have to like it. It doesn't matter to me whether you like it or not. You know, and he has one of these voices that kind of divides. For me, I like his voice. I've appreciated the way it's even changed throughout the years. And I like the way that he is able to phrase the lyrics to fit into the way he's written the music. And he's very unique in the way he's able to phrase his lyrics. And so I really like that. And as far as his voice goes, I like the fact that it's so unique and it stands out so much that it does cause people to either really like it or really hate it. And to me, I kind of like that basically his uniqueness draws that stark contrast. And so I'm on the side of the people that like his voice and appreciate it, but also even more so appreciate his ability to write new music, to stay relevant throughout this whole, since 1962. And tell me who else has been able to do that? Not very many people. Look at all the pop bands in the 50s that came out in the 60s. Most of them didn't have long careers. Most of them had a few albums that had a few good songs on them, and that was it. They were done. Look at my perfect example would be a lot of the Motown stuff, which I love Motown. I love a lot of those records. I have a big R&B section, and I like a lot of that stuff, the Temptations and Supremes and Smokey Robinson and that stuff. But let's face it, folks, they had no longevity to them. They're still stuck in the 60s, and they still sound like the 60s. And again, nothing wrong with that. I listen to them. But they have not had the prolific career. They've not had the songs and the careers that have carried on for the most part through 60 years of new material. Most of those people, with the exception of like Diana Ross, who had a pretty long career, but most of them weren't able to string together 60 years of successful songwriting and keeping their career going and being, great songwriters or having people write good songs for them to sing. That's another thing about Bob Dylan is he writes his own music for the most part. Very few covers throughout his career that have been recorded. And if you go back to the Motown people, most of them the songs were written for them. And again, nothing wrong with that. Great songs. But again, it shows a stark difference in contrast between the level of musicianship and the level of creativity that you have with Bob Dylan versus a lot of those pop artists, whether they be Motown or any of these other bands that were one or two record, had a couple hits and they were gone. And they couldn't adapt, they couldn't change, they couldn't write new music, they couldn't write meaningful lyrics. And so again, that's what makes Bob Dylan pretty unique among a lot of, when you compare him to the majority of musicians out there, that he has the staying power that few have. Well, that's all I have to say, and we'll talk to you next time on the next episode.